Today we will learn about a shocking maritime accident that exposed the irresponsibility of the British Management Agency. September 8, 1980, a British cargo ship was traveling on the Atlantic Ocean. The ship was named Derbyshire, departing from Canada. Derbyshire was destined for Japan, theoretically going through the Panama Canal or the Suez Canal, the shortest route. But because the ship had water depths of up to 18 meters, both of these routes were not feasible. Therefore, Derbyshire was forced to cross the Atlantic Ocean around the southern tip of Africa, then continue through the Indian Ocean and enter the Pacific Ocean through the final casting area to reach the port of Kawasaki in Japan. On board were a total of 43 people. The captain was Fernando Torres, just 47 years old, with 23 years of experience at sea. Derbyshire was a giant ship, 294 meters long, 44 meters wide, with 9 large cargo holds filled with 15 tons of iron ore. When fully loaded, it can reach a load of up to 160,000 tons because the ship is so large and heavy that when it needs to slow down, it takes about 3 kilometers to stop completely. However, thanks to its massive size, the ship can easily withstand most storms without being affected too much. But when observing the sky and sea ahead, the captain suddenly had a hunch that a storm was forming. Meteorological data confirmed his guess right on the route the ship was passing through a tropical storm named Orchid that was developing. Encountering storms at sea is not uncommon, just need to avoid it in time. But what gave the captain a headache was that he received 3 weather maps from Guam, the US, Japan, and China. And the most worrying thing was that all 3 maps predicted different trajectories of the storm. Because it was impossible to accurately determine the path of Orchid, the captain had no choice but to try to avoid all 3 forecast directions. The captain then set out a new route and ordered the crew to prepare for the storm. They quickly closed all the hatch doors and covered them with tarpaulins to increase the water resistance. After completing all the preparations, most of the crew went down to the rest area, while a few stayed in the cockpit to monitor the weather. A few hours later, the situation began to deteriorate due to the unpredictable path of the storm. They still could not avoid it. Derbyshire, unfortunately, went straight into the eye of the storm outside. The wind was howling, the waves were rolling, the thunder was rumbling, the ship was shaking violently. There was concern that the strong waves could capsize the ship. The captain decided to adjust the ship's direction so that the bow of the ship was pointed straight into the waves. This way, it helped reduce the risk of capsizing, but it made the ship sway more violently. The sailors in the cabin could barely stand because the waves were too big. The Derbyshire's speed could not increase. The ship was even getting closer and closer to the center of the storm. The wind outside had reached a speed of about 100 kilometers per hour. Darkness covered the entire ocean. The ship looked like a small leaf being swept away in the middle of the ocean. Despair began to spread in the sailors' hearts when they realized that the ship was almost out of control. There was no other choice. The captain decided to try to hold on until the storm passed, but no one expected that they would have to wait for 2 long days. But the storm showed no signs of weakening. The giant waves continuously hit the ship's hull for 50 hours until midnight. A wave that they had never seen before in their lives appeared before their eyes, looking like a giant monster rushing straight into them. The bow of the ship immediately after that, the ship emitted a terrifying sound of steel being twisted. The hull was torn open, revealing a large hole. Dozens of tons of seawater rushed into the compartment in the blink of an eye, sinking more than half of the ship. Seeing this scene, the captain understood that the ship could not be saved anymore. He immediately pulled the alarm and ordered to abandon ship to escape. But at this point, it was all too late. The speed of the ship's sinking was so fast that no one had enough time to run up to the bomb. In fact, even if they had run up with such fierce waves, jumping into the sea was almost synonymous with death. Therefore, when the Derbyshire sank to the bottom of the ocean, most of the sailors were still trapped in the compartment. No one had time to escape. 5 days after the storm gradually subsided, many countries coordinated a search at sea, but in the end, nothing was found because Derbyshire did not send any distress signals before disappearing. No one knew exactly where it sank. Later, the British government announced that the ship was sunk by the storm because the crew did not close the hatch properly. This way of blaming made the sailors' families extremely angry. The ship had not been found yet, so how could they claim that this was their fault? Furthermore, they believed that the company that owned Derbyshire was the real culprit. A sister ship of Derbyshire, manufactured in the same factory, had almost sunk due to a cracked wall and water entering. This led them to believe that Derbyshire had also encountered similar problems. To clear the sailors' names, their families decided to find out the truth. The sailors' families set up an investigation team to find out the truth. After nearly 6 years of searching, they finally located the location where Derbyshire sank. However, it took 17 years for the British government to agree to reopen the investigation. After nearly 2 years of careful research, the real cause of the sinking was clarified. The report concluded that due to being continuously attacked by large waves, for 2 days, the ventilation system and cargo hatch at the bow of Derbyshire were damaged, causing seawater to begin to flood into the hold. As more and more water, gradually 9 cargo hold doors were torn open by pressure. Tons of seawater rushed into the hull. This caused Derbyshire to completely lose balance and sink to the bottom of the ocean. In just a few minutes, the cause of the tragedy was not the fault of the crew, but due to the ship's design having serious flaws in the waterproofing system in the hold. The front was not good enough, and the hatch cover was too weak to withstand the rough seas. Finally, the tireless efforts of the sailors' families were rewarded. In 2004, the Derbyshire Family Association and the leader of the Pulamos investigation were awarded the Thomas Heather Award by the Royal Naval Association, and each family with relatives on board received a large amount of compensation as a way to ease the loss they had suffered. Thank you for watching. Please share and subscribe to the channel. Goodbye, and see you again.